Recording now, this is lesson 3.6, division with decimal numbers. Before watching the recording, please make sure that you have a graph sheet of paper in front of you, or you may be writing these notes in your math journal, a pencil, a different colored pen that may come in handy with color coding, as well as an eraser. So if you need to pause the recording to grab those items, please feel free to do so. I'm going to continue with the recording now, and what we'll do is we'll work through one example of division with decimal numbers and see how you do with that. So please set up your page as I have here. Write down today's date at the top of the page. The lesson number is 3.6, division with decimal numbers. And the example we'll work with will be 52 1/10 divided by 9/10. So again, if you need to pause the recording to set up your page, do that now, and I will continue on. So the process of dividing with decimal numbers is very similar to what we do with multiplication of decimal numbers. But this time we're actually going to start off with the estimate first, because the estimate will guide our placement of our decimal in our quotient, and also it will determine how far we need to divide, because we're actually not going to be dealing with remainders when we're doing the division here. So let's do an estimate first of this. I'm just going to jot this down in green underneath. So if I look at 52 1/10, and 52 1/10, I would estimate that to the nearest whole number as being 52. If you look at 9/10 here, I would estimate that to the nearest whole number as being 1. So your answer to this division question is going to be around 52. And again, that will help you determine where your decimal place goes and also how far you're going to divide with decimal numbers here. And that'll be more clear as we do the example. Okay, so what you're going to do next, and I'm actually going to go to the next page here. So I need to make sure I have lots of room, but please continue on your page that you have there. Is we'll set up the division question, and again, like what we did with decimal numbers, we're going to forget that the decimal is there to begin with first. Okay, so we have 521 instead of 52 1/10 as our dividend, and we have 9 instead of 9/10 as our divisor. Okay, now I am going to warn you that if you are used to using the repeated subtraction method when you're dividing and doing long division, that may not be the best method for you to do when you're dividing with decimal numbers. So I'm going to repeat that. If you use the repeated subtraction method, it may not be the best method for you to use when you are dividing with decimal numbers. So I'm going to take it back to how we typically do division, and that is the divide. I'm just going to jot it down up here: multiply, subtract, and bring down, and also repeat. So again, that's divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, and repeat. Okay, so you can use whatever acronym that will help you remember the order of steps. So it could be dad, mother, sister, brother, Dracula's mother sucks blood, whatever helps you. So we're going to continue with the division here. We're looking at 521 divided by 9. Now, we take it back to basics here. So we look at the 9 as our divisor. So can 9 go into 5? No, we actually don't have enough of the 5 for that to happen. So I typically like to put a 0 as a placeholder here. You don't have to do that. Then you look at the next two numbers here. So can 9 go into 52? Yes, it can. Approximately how many times can it go into 52 without going over? We know it can go 5 because 5 times 9, and this is the multiplication step, 5 times 9 is 45. And that's our subtract step. So we're going to subtract. That's our next step there. So we're going to do the subtraction, and we end up with 7. 52 minus 45 is 7. Okay. Now, the next step, we're going to bring down the 1. Okay, some people like to put a little X. You like to use an arrow to show that I'm bringing down the 1. Now, the next part is you can look at this as the division again. How many times approximately is 71 divided by 9? Well, we know the closest we can get is probably 7, okay? Because 7 times 9 is 63. So we're going to do the subtract step in this cycle here. So 7 times 9 is 63. Notice how I'm lining up my digits nicely so that the subtraction is set up nicely for me. Okay, so I know that 11 minus 3 is 8 here. Okay, now this step you may not be aware of before. So typically in long division in the past, you may have stopped here and you may have written down 57 remainder 8 as your answer. But in this case, we actually want to keep dividing. So we want to keep dividing so that we can round our quotient to the nearest tenth. Okay, so I'm going to repeat. We're going to keep dividing until we can round our quotient to the nearest tenth. Remember that our estimate from the previous page, we estimated this answer as being approximately 52. I'm going to just jot down the estimate down here because that was on my previous page. Remember that the estimate was about 52. Now, we want to be a little bit more exact, obviously, when we're doing our division. So we're going to keep rounding until we can round our, we're going to keep dividing until we can round our quotient to the nearest tenth, which means we need to go 2 more digits here. So what we do is we bring down a 0 here and we add a 0 to our dividend, okay? We're going to bring down a 0 here and we would divide as normal and follow the cycle and follow the order of steps. So 80 divided by 9 is approximately 8 because 8 times 9 is 72. That's the closest we can get to 80 without going over. 80 minus 72, when you're doing the subtraction, you end up with 8, okay? Now, I can already tell that this is probably going to be a repeating decimal because if you look at this again, you're bringing down a 0. 80 divided by 9, approximately how many times? You get 8 again, and then 8 times 9 is 72. Now, and we get an 8. So you can actually tell already the way the quotient is going, it's probably going to be a repeating decimal in this case, okay? In other cases, you may end up with an irrational number. In some cases, you'll have a terminating decimal, but I can already tell that this is going to repeat. But I've gone enough so that I have 2 more digits than the estimate here. Okay, that's as far as I want to divide. And also too, our objective for this question is that you want to round your quotient to the nearest tenth. Okay, so right now we have 5788 as our answer here. So I'm going to jot this down here. We have 5788. So where are we going to place the decimal point? If we look back to our original estimate of 52, we know that our answer has to be around 52. So the decimal point has to go between the 7 and the 8. However, if you were to round this answer to the nearest tenth, or the quotient to the nearest tenth, you would have 57 and 9 tenths because the digit in the hundredths place is an 8, so we follow the regular rules of rounding. Where it's 5 and above, you go up. So in the tenth spot, you go to the nearest digit, which would be 9. So our final answer is 57 and 9 tenths. Okay, I'm going to repeat the process once again. So what we did first is we looked at our original question, 52 and 1/10 divided by 9 tenths. So we looked at that and we estimated what we thought our quotient was going to be by taking each of the numbers, the dividend and the divisor, and rounding it to the nearest whole number. So we got 52 as our estimate. Okay, and then what we did was we forgot the decimal already, so we divided as normal as we would with whole numbers. Now, in this case, remember that you had to add in the 2 zeros here because we had to go 2 more digits than what we estimated. So we went 4 digits in the quotient, plus we needed to have enough digits so that we could round the quotient to the nearest tenth. So the way we did that is we added zeros to the dividend and we would divide and follow the cycle as normal. Okay, so that's what we did here. We ended up with 5788 in our quotient. In this case, you can tell that this is going to be a repeating decimal. It won't always be a repeating decimal. So we took the numbers in the quotient, we determined the decimal placement had to be between the 7 and the 8 based on our original estimate because it had to be around 52. Final task was rounding the quotient to the nearest tenth, and so what we got was 57 and 9/10. And that is division with decimal numbers.